My dear friends, if I could gather you all around my kitchen table right now, there's a conversation I'd love for us to have, one that hums in my heart with the wisdom of years. We spend so much of our lives looking forward, planning, striving, and then, almost overnight, we find ourselves in a season of reflection, wondering what threads we might have woven differently. Today, I want to share a tender secret with you, something I've pondered over many a quiet morning cup of tea. If I could whisper a few words into the ear of my 50-year-old self, a woman much like some of you watching today, I'd offer 5 crucial skills, 5 gentle practices that would have eased so many paths and deepened so many connections. These aren't grand ambitions, dear ones, but quiet arts, fundamental to navigating the beautiful, complex tapestry of our later years with grace and purpose. They're gifts we can give ourselves, right here, right now, no matter our age. The first skill, the one that truly unlocks so much in our relationships, is the art of deep listening, truly hearing, not just waiting to speak. We often think we're listening when, in truth, we're simply waiting for our turn to offer advice or share our own experience. But deep listening, that sacred act of truly opening your heart and mind to another's words, is a skill that transforms relationships and builds bridges where walls once stood. I remember a time, not long after my late husband, Robert, had retired from the pulpit. He'd always been a man of words. And I'd been the ever-present confidant, the one who organized the bake sales and listened to parishioners' woes. But our dynamic had shifted. He was home more, and sometimes I found myself feeling unseen, unheard in our daily dance. One afternoon, our eldest daughter, Sarah, visited. She was wrestling with a difficult decision at work, juggling her own children, and she came to me seeking a sounding board. I started to do what I often did, offering solutions, sharing anecdotes from my own teaching days, and then I caught a glimpse of her face, a subtle shift in her eyes, a kind of polite resignation. It was a mirror, reflecting my own habit of not quite landing in the conversation. Later that week, I saw Silas, our dear friend and the retired accountant, sharing a quiet moment with his grandson. Silas, for all his intellectual brilliance, had a newfound warmth in his later years, a gentleness I admired. I watched as his grandson chattered excitedly about a new Lego creation, and Silas, instead of interjecting with questions or suggestions, simply nodded, a soft smile on his face, his gaze unwavering. He wasn't just hearing, he was seeing his grandson. It struck me then, like a gentle whisper in my spirit. I went home and made myself a cup of tea, thinking of Sarah, thinking of Robert. I realized I hadn't truly given them the gift of my undivided attention, not in the way Silas gave it to his grandson. The next day, when Robert started telling me about a new bird he'd spotted in the garden, instead of mentally drafting my grocery list, I leaned in. I asked, "Oh, really? Tell me more about its song, or what color were its feathers?" Simple questions, but they came from a place of genuine curiosity, not just conversational etiquette. And something beautiful happened. His eyes lit up. He spoke with more detail, more animation. The connection deepened, even over something as simple as a bird. If I could go back to 50, I'd practice setting aside my own agenda, my own answers, and simply offer the quiet space of my full presence. It might be worth asking yourself, in your conversations, are you truly listening with an open heart, or are you preparing your reply? What a gift that undivided attention can be, both for the speaker and for the listener. The second skill, equally vital, is the grace of gentle boundaries, protecting your inner well. As women, especially as mothers and caregivers, we're often wired to give and give, sometimes until our own well runs dry. Mastering the art of gentle boundaries isn't about building walls. It's about tending to your own spirit, ensuring you have enough to pour out without depleting your own precious resources. It's an act of self-care rooted in love for yourself and for those you serve. I remember when my children were growing up, and then later when my own mother's health began to decline. I felt a constant tug, a relentless call to be everything to everyone, a teacher by day, a mother and wife at evening, a caregiver on weekends, and a volunteer at church in between. My days felt like a long, winding river, and I was perpetually paddling upstream. I thought saying no was selfish, a sign of weakness. I believed my worth was tied to my tireless service. But there were quiet moments in the wee hours of the morning when a deep exhaustion would settle over me, and I'd feel a flicker of resentment even towards those I loved dearly. This wasn't the grace-filled heart I aspired to have. I remember confiding in Clara, our wonderfully spirited retired art teacher, one afternoon over tea at the community center. I was lamenting how I felt pulled in a million directions, barely keeping my head above water. Clara, with her characteristic twinkle in her eye, simply said, "Grace, my dear, a canvas needs its edges. How else would the painting hold its form? Your spirit is your canvas. Give it boundaries and watch the beauty emerge."
Her words, so simple yet so profound, echoed in my mind. It wasn't about shutting people out, but about defining my own space, my own time for rest and rejuvenation. I started small. Instead of immediately agreeing to every request, I began saying, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you." Or, "I'd love to help, but I can offer this much, not more." It felt awkward at first, a strange language on my tongue, but slowly, gently, I began to reclaim small pockets of time for prayer, for reading, for simply sitting in the garden with a cup of tea. It wasn't about being less available, it was about being more present when I was available, because I wasn't running on fumes. I learned that my capacity to love and serve wasn't endless, but it was renewed, like the morning dew, when I honored my own need for rest and quiet. If I could go back to 50, I'd learn to draw those gentle lines in the sand much sooner. It might be worth asking yourself, where in your life could a gentle boundary create more peace, more joy, more genuine connection, not less? Remember, dear one, to care for others, you must first tend to the garden of your own soul. Our third essential skill is the practice of rooted gratitude beyond the surface. We often express gratitude for the big blessings, health, family, home, and rightly so. But there's a deeper, more transformative practice of gratitude, a rooted gratitude that seeks out the quiet mercies, the small miracles embedded in the everyday, even amidst life's challenges. It's a lens through which we can choose to view the world, finding glimmers of light even in the shadows. After Robert passed, there were days when the world felt muted, stripped of its vibrancy. The silence in the house was often deafening, and the familiar routines, once comforting, became reminders of what was lost. I found myself drifting, and though I knew, intellectually, that there was still much to be thankful for, my heart struggled to catch up. I found myself in conversations, answering, "I'm fine," even when my soul felt anything but. One dreary afternoon, I was walking through the park near my home, the very same park where Robert and I used to take our evening strolls. The leaves were soggy, the sky was gray, and my spirit felt just as damp. I saw Elias, always so grounded, meticulously carving something from a piece of wood on a park bench. He looked up, offered a warm smile, and invited me to sit. We spoke for a while, and I shared a little of my struggle with the pervasive grief. Elias, without lecturing, without offering platitudes, simply pointed to the intricate grain of the wood he was working with. He said, "See this grace, this knot here, this imperfection, it tells a story. It's part of the beauty. Just like the quiet growth of a tree, even on the days it feels barren, there's a root system holding it firm, drawing strength from hidden places. His words, simple as they were, resonated deeply. That evening, instead of focusing on the emptiness, I tried something different. I made a conscious effort to find just one quiet mercy, something small, something easily overlooked, and write it down. The warmth of my teacup in my hands, the way the light caught a dust mote dancing in the air, a kind word from the grocery clerk. At first, it felt forced, a mental exercise, but gradually, as days turned into weeks, my heart began to soften. I started seeing them, these tiny threads of grace, without even trying. The robin singing at dawn, the crispness of a fresh apple, the simple act of breathing. It wasn't about denying the pain, it was about acknowledging that, even in sorrow, there was still a wellspring of quiet goodness to be found. It was a practice of choosing to see the light, even when it felt dim, a gentle way of nurturing my faith when it felt fragile. If I could go back to 50, I'd cultivate this rooted gratitude, this daily seeking of the small, often overlooked blessings much earlier. It might be worth asking yourself, beyond the obvious blessings, what quiet mercies are unfolding in your day unnoticed? What if you gently sought them out, just one each day? If something in this is resonating with you, I'd be so grateful to know. You might just type, "I'm listening," in the comments below so we know we're in this together. It helps to know we are not alone on this path. Our fourth essential skill is embracing imperfection and cultivating self-compassion, a loving gaze. We live in a world that often demands perfection, from our appearance to our achievements. But the truth, dear ones, is that life is beautifully, messily imperfect, and so are we. Mastering the skill of embracing your own imperfections and extending true compassion to yourself is a profound act of liberation. It frees us from the tyranny of shoulds and allows us to simply be in our wholeness. For so much of my life, I carried a quiet pressure, a feeling that I always had to be together, to have all the answers, especially as a pastor's wife and a teacher. There was a constant, gentle hum of self-criticism in my mind, a little voice pointing out every perceived flaw, every misstep. If a lesson didn't go perfectly, if a casserole wasn't just right, if I stumbled over a word in conversation, the internal critique would begin. It was exhausting, though I didn't realize it then. I thought it was simply a part of striving to be good, to be worthy.
I remember one particular incident, years ago, when I was organizing a big church supper. I had everything meticulously planned, right down to the last dessert spoon. And then, at the last minute, a volunteer fell ill, and the entire dessert table was in jeopardy. I tried to do it all, baking late into the night, feeling a frantic energy consume me. By the time the supper began, I was utterly spent, and to my horror, I realized I'd forgotten to pick up the ice cream. A small detail, perhaps, but in my mind, it was a colossal failure. I felt a wave of shame wash over me, convinced I'd let everyone down. Arthur, our beloved Arthur, with his deep wisdom and poetic spirit, saw me looking distraught by the empty ice cream buckets. He came over, and with a soft smile that always reminded me of his late wife, Eleanor's gentle warmth, he said, "Grace, my dear, sometimes the most beautiful hymns are those with an unexpected pause, a quiet space where the listener can breathe. Perhaps a simple bowl of fruit, offered with a loving heart, is more nourishing than a perfect sundae achieved through frantic striving." His words were a balm. He wasn't excusing my oversight, he was offering a different perspective, one rooted in grace, not perfection. It was a slow unraveling for me, this journey of self-compassion. I started consciously challenging that critical inner voice. Instead of "I messed up," I'd try, "I did my best in a challenging situation." Instead of "I should have known better," I'd whisper,
I am learning just like everyone else. It wasn't about lowering my standards, but about softening my gaze toward myself, recognizing that my worth wasn't tied to flawless execution, but to my inherent value as a child of God, perfectly imperfect. It allowed me to breathe more deeply, to laugh at my own foibles, and to be more genuinely empathetic towards others when they stumbled. If I could go back to 50, I'd extend myself the same tender understanding I so readily offered to others. It might be worth asking yourself, where are you holding yourself to an impossible standard? What if, just for today, you offered yourself the same kindness, the same grace you would offer to a dear friend? And finally, our fifth skill, the very essence of our shared humanity, is cultivating intentional connection, weaving our human tapestry. As the years pass, life often scatters us. Children move away, friends may pass on, and the rhythms of our daily lives shift. But the human heart thrives on connection, on the warmth of shared stories, laughter, and sometimes even shared tears. Mastering the skill of intentionally cultivating and nurturing these threads of connection is not just a social nicety, it's a profound act of building resilience, joy, and belonging for ourselves and for those around us. When Robert and I first moved to this town decades ago, the community felt so naturally woven. Neighbors knew each other, children played freely between houses, and there was a constant hum of shared life. But over the years, as neighborhoods changed, as technology drew us into our own little worlds, I noticed a subtle fraying of those connections. Families kept more to themselves, conversations became shorter, and the sense of shared belonging seemed to thin. After Robert's passing, this feeling intensified for me. Despite being surrounded by loving friends, there were moments of profound loneliness. I remembered a conversation with Hazel, our adventurous retired librarian, who had just returned from a solo trip abroad. She often spoke of the importance of seeking out new experiences and new faces, but also of cherishing the golden threads of long-held friendships. She said, "Grace, an old book reread can offer new wisdom. An old friend re-engaged can offer new solace." Her words sparked something in me. I realized I had often waited for connection to just simply happen, to be invited, to be sought out. But perhaps it was a skill I needed to actively cultivate, to initiate. So I started small. I began making a point to greet neighbors by name, asking genuine questions about their day, not just a passing hello. I resurrected my old tradition of baking a small treat for new families who moved onto our street, not with any expectation, but just as a gentle gesture of welcome. I also started reaching out more intentionally to my existing circle. Instead of just replying to a group text, I'd send a personal note or make a phone call to check in, just to hear a voice. I organized a weekly tea time with a few friends, not for any particular reason, just for the simple joy of sitting together, sharing stories, and knitting. These weren't grand gestures, but they were consistent, deliberate acts of weaving. And I watched, with a full heart, as those connections began to deepen again, as new threads were added to our community tapestry. I learned that connection wasn't just a byproduct of life, it was something we had to tend to, like a beloved garden, watering it with presence and intention. It brought back a profound sense of belonging, not just for me, but for the circle of friends I cherished. If I could go back to 50, I'd treat the cultivation of intentional connection as a vital skill, not just a spontaneous event. It might be worth asking yourself, what small, gentle step could you take this week to strengthen a thread of connection in your own life? Who could you reach out to simply to share a moment of human warmth? My dear ones, looking back, it's easy to see life as a series of events, of triumphs and challenges. But in truth, it's a tapestry woven with countless threads. Threads of connection, of self-discovery, of quiet grace. These 5 skills, this art of deep listening, the courage of gentle boundaries, the steadfast heart of rooted gratitude, the tender embrace of imperfection, and the intentional weaving of community, they are not destinations to be reached, they are practices, daily invitations to live more fully, more authentically, with an open heart. They are the quiet graces that allow us to navigate life's inevitable changes, not just with resilience, but with a deeper sense of purpose and belonging. And it is never too late to begin. The beauty of these skills is that they are always within reach, waiting for us to pick up the needle and thread and begin weaving anew. Thank you, dear friends, for sharing this quiet space with me today, for lending your ears and your hearts to these reflections. May your journey be blessed with moments of profound connection and unwavering grace. As we consider these gentle arts, it might be worth taking some time to truly sit with them, to let them settle within you. To help you reflect on your own story and how these insights might gently guide your path forward, I've prepared a special companion for you. It's a free guide called The First 5 Questions, a gentle guide to rediscovering your story. You can download it for free by clicking the link in the description below or by visiting eldersechoes.com. Be gentle with yourself this week